So today I want to talk about the seven sisters of the underworld. I am the Scandinavian seer, that's what they call me. And let's jump in. So the last time I gave a video, I was talking about how ego can be incorporated and linked to the seven deadly sins. And I addressed those and I went from down to up. And again, I want to continue that discussion of how ego really is something that I think is one of our trials. And I will do another video on the seven trials. So I'm thinking, let's get a recap. So I'm going to recap from the seven deadly sins. So last week, I think I addressed them, like I said, from down up. So I'm going to do the same this way. And then this time when I'm doing the seven sisters of the underworld, I'm going to go from the top, from number 1 all the way to the last. So let's go for some pride. So pride, remember I was talking about how it was being very narcissistic, conceited, very boasting about all their wants and how they were almighty and great, and they had no regard for anyone else. So that is pride. Then we had envy, and envy was all about being extremely bitter, that they would actually wish ill will towards somebody else because somebody had something that they wanted, or just they didn't want anybody to have anything else. And it usually had things to do with lovers and objects, materialistic stuff. And they would actually wish death. So that was envy. And it's an extreme jealousy on 1,000. And then we had wrath. And wrath was, remember, the hate turned into anger, and hate was all an internal drive. So the hate was the narrative that you said, or the words that were spoken, the feelings that you had, and then anger was the actual expression of attack or violence. Then we had sloth. Sloth was the procrastination, the lack of motivation, the lack of movement, failure to continue. So sloth was more, everybody would call it laziness, but it is actually kind of a procrastination. You could put it on the back burner, and then there was greed, and greed was always obtaining the maximum, the most, wanted everything, mostly on this plane, materialistic. And then we had greed, and greed was all of overindulgence, but greed was actually the maximum level that they could have. And then you had gluttony. Now, gluttony was the addiction, was the overindulgence. And most people think it's just food, but it could be overindulging in anything. So gluttony was number 2. And then my final one was lust. And lust was the control. Remember, the obsessiveness, the compulsion, the overbearing. And there's my dog. She's always got to be involved in something. Let that recap. As I'm going to discuss the seven sisters of the underworld, I'm also going to attribute how they are linked, and each one has a specific craft, something that they specialize in. Same thing with the seven deadly sins. Each word is associated to a specific set of behaviors, as well as the seven sisters of the underworld. And as I do another video, there'll be the seven fallen princes. They are attributed to mastering over one specific set of behaviors. And then if you can look at it, we're going to also talk about ego, and ego, how they can relate, and those specific behaviors actually are attributed to the seven deadly sins and the seven sisters of the underworld, as well as the seven fallen princes. And then we'll go on into more theologies and mythologies. So a lot of the seven sisters of the underworld, the biggest introduction into them being isolated with names was in the testimony of Solomon. And Solomon, if you look in chapter 8, that was, I think chapter 8 is pretty much everything down. And he talked about his encounter of 36 spirits of darkness. And those can get very intense. And I think you really have to be more literate when it comes to how the doctrine was written in that time frame, the language style that they would use to really understand some of them as you breaking it apart. But they did a really good job in some of the New King James and the new rewrites. It's also been noted in the book of Enoch, Jasper, and the Apocrypha, which is the book of the Watchers. And Enoch is Abraham's seventh son, And so he did a lot, and he had his own encounter within it, and he called them the seven demon sisters. I will give you probably the biblical name, and Solomon wrote a lot of it on his 36 encounters of the spirit of how to, what were their weaknesses and how you can combat them. If you want to go to that doctrine, I may note a couple of them in here, because like I said, that takes us off into a whole nother area, which would be talking more of a magic and spells that you would have to do. That's how they label it here in the modern world, but back then it was more of offerings, and God had given us the right words to say, as well as the special mix of herbs, to burn or to cast to keep the demons at bay. So let's jump right in. I'm going to go from the top to the bottom, and we're going to do the first. And the first one, her name is, actually her real biblical name is Decan, and the means deceit. She causes divide and division, conflict among men and human populations, community. She uses tactics of manipulation, lies, and alcohol. She uses a lot of those, to causes wedges and divisions within. You cause mistrust. She causes a lot of fights. Deceit is all about the narrative, so that cares about nobody, except that they are the best of the best, and she will spin the narrative in that way. That's what causes the division, and then it becomes conflictual because you become more narcissistic. So if you can already figure out which sister is attributed to which sin, and that would be pride, because they are the most boastful, they are the most narcissistic, they have disregard for anyone else except for themselves, and they will be whatever lie, deception, creative story they want to do to put themselves on top, of everybody's mind, as they are the best and everyone else should bow below them. So deceit, Decan, sister number one. And we can see also that when we talk and attribute it to ego and our mind, we are talking about how we are being very conceited, but we don't think about anyone else except for our own self. And developmentally, we are like that when we are children, when we just need our basic needs. And as we develop into a human being with spiritual path, that is not something that you should stick into, because you're no longer needing those needs. You can see that the world is outside, and that there's others that is just as connectivity as needed. So deceit is our first, and then we move on to our second sister, which is strife. Her biblical name is Wrath. Well, and it's Rath. So strife is a unique sister. She causes everybody quickly get angry. So this is a little different because she is after the narrative has already been spun, she's quick to creating fights, having everybody get angered. So the energy that comes with that one is more of 0 to 100. When you talk about those that talk about animals, dogs that are 0 to code red real quick, that's kind of what she would be. You wouldn't sit around and stew. You would actually act on it. And so hers was strife to cause battle and fights. She's called wrath, and of course the ego. We are quick to be emotionally unregulated, and it's better that everybody's attacking us in our mind if we put in there that, we have to fight for everything that we have, everything battle. We have to create some kind of boundaries with our fists, and pound and kill the other guy or girl that our brain created that they are out to totally destroy us, just like we would have to destroy them first. Eye for an eye, I guess. That Pleiades and Socrates probably would have attributed to her, that an eye for an eye, you hurt me with words, I kill you. And that could be our ego as well. So strife is our number 2. Wrath. She causes the quickening of anger. And then we have battle. Number 3, sister number 3 is battle. And I know battle thinks you're thinking anger, but battle is all about the little, like, well, her true name is Rebos. And it's all about corrupting people from the inside. So the battles are all within. So if we think about it in modern day world, we always talk about the battle's not outside, the battle's within ourselves. And that is technically what she does. She causes a lot of internal dissonance. Gluttony is the sin that she is attributed and closely connected to, is gluttony. And gluttony, remind you, was all of becoming overindulgence from the inside. Overindulgence in anything that is destroying your body, from in, emotionally unregulated, fighting, alcohol, drugs, constant negative talk. And her biblical name, Rebos. And it's Rab and Bos. And so, I'm constantly corrupting myself within. And so she causes an internal battle. And internal battle explores, we look at ego. That is probably the hardest thing is to battle ourselves. We so often want to attribute outside our world the evilness, and it's actually that they're doing it to us, and in actuality, battle creates it from inside us and then causes the illusion that it's out there. Then you have deceit, which is the other sister one that actually heightens that deceptive illusional thought by creating even more of a narrative, and then it causes it to the fight and the wrath. So that is battle, sister number 3, and Rebos is her name. And she's attributed to gluttony, overindulgence. Then we have sister number 4, and sister number 4 is her biblical name is Ibai Zuth. They call her the winged dragon, and she is jealousy. So she's the sister of jealousy, which is to lead men to create a strife within. They lose all reasoning. I know when we were talking about it last week, and envy was more of that over ill will, jealousy, would actually internally, energetically want to wish death upon or decay upon another human because they had something. And that is similar to what she does. Jealousy is all about causing you to lose all your reasoning and your skills, and as well as couldn't commit strifes against each other because they have something that you feel you deserve. You lose all your reasonings. Just because they have it doesn't mean that you need it. And so our brain, our ego does the same thing. So it actually feeds into this whole narrative that you are not worthy without having everything that somebody else has. So it's like the Joneses next door. Oh, well, I want to be like them because they have this, and that my value is based on that. And so hers is all about creating this narrative for you to lose your reasoning of who you are as a value and realize that you are not nothing without them. And what they have, and it creates this fight that you need to take it, and then it spins off into an illusion that you need it and you'll steal it and use wrath and Rebos and your other sister's pride and deceit to create this narrative in your head, because that's what ego does. It'll keep ruminating about the same things that you're not worthy unless you have what they have, and they did this to you. So your brain will actually turn it around to saying they did it to you. So you'll lose all reasoning in self, and you pretty much would be going insane until you act on it, and then you'll find another target after that. So that is sister number 4, Obizuth, the winged dragon that likes to fly from place to place and take this illusion that people are out to squash you, and you need what they have to be any kind of a value. And then we have sister number 5, and it is power. Her name is power, just simply off. And everybody knows what power is, but power is also attributed, well, and her name is Enipsigos is how you call her. Enipsigos is her biblical name, and she is attributed to greed, and that is obtaining all obsessiveness, like really maximum of the materialistic, superficial, this power. It's everything over. That I know in the other ones, lust was considered of control, but this one, she is attributed to basically overthrowing kingdoms, kings, greed to take over everything, having the maximum of all, and it's more of maximum of all humans, having all of what they have, all of their monetarial attributes that they have gained over the years or their centuries or their families, lands, animals, sacrifices. She is the one that overthrows all of them and leaves them with nothing. And then we have number 6, and 6 is air. Her name is so hard to say, I had to write it down. Tribuleos. So tribuleos. Of course, it's in the Book of Solomon. Tribuleos, air. She is attributed to committing the most ethical and moral violations by deviating human from God and all of the morality and the ethics that we have. She was great at that, and how she did that, and she is closely attributed to procrastination, the lack of failure of movement. So it's the lack of drive, the failure to move and take action, to enlightenment, to continue on your path of ascension, to enlightenment. So air was all about increasing your slothness. So she is attributed to the 7 deadly sins of sloth. And sloth was all about that procrastination, not moving forward. Don't take action to fail. Almost as a fear in the background. So she is the 6th sister that is attributed out, and we can see that in ego. We talk ourselves out of it all the time, that we're not worthy. That, oh, well, I'll do it later, and later never comes. Your brain has a way of tricking it, and that is your ego. And your ego has to have the balancer, of course. That was several videos ago. I talked about super ego versus super ego, and how you needed your super ego, which is your light side, which is balancing out your ego, which is your dark side. And of course, you need balancers. So not all of these are a negative. So me as a Scandinavian, I'd be looking at deceit and being pride. It's okay to boast, but it's also okay to boast and add family with it. So boasting for another is just as much as important as boasting about yourself. So like if your children did something wonderful, you'd want to praise them and boast about that. It attributes to you because they're part of you, or your friends, or your family, or a friend, a coworker. It attributes to you. You get some accolades as well, and it's not always selfish. And so part of that would be to counterbalance it with an energy of non-selfishness. Do something charity-wise. Then you would have strife, and so me would look at strife as more of the wrath and anger, and of course, anger has to be validated, and not all the time do you need to do it with fists or death or killing. Me as a Scandinavian, it's not a bad thing to be angry, to have an anger expression, especially if you're defending yourself. To hate, that's something that I don't usually was brought up to not believe that is something that's like terminal. You can never take it back once you take it out there like a word. So hate is soul. You take a piece of your soul when you do that. And so I'm pretty sure that Christians would view it the same way. So energetic wise, we would do an emotional meditation or mindfulness activity. We would go out for prayer, go for a walk, go out and do something family wise. But mostly we would pay an homage and offer in prayer. Then you have battle, which is the gluttony, which is our corrupting of the inside. Um, and so me as a gluttony, it's overindulgence. Try to keep the balance, but that happens all the time. And I think what is it's something that we'd have to combat in ourselves, and that is one of our trials. So we don't actually look at it as a bad thing. We just know that what it is, it comes, and we know it's there, and that we have to fight it, and use and dance with it in a way, because there's a purpose for it to be there, and the be there is to build the strength to counter it, by knowing it's there, embracing that the drive is there, but stopping yourself from doing it and recognizing that you were able to stop it. That is the strength that we would want. So we're actually kind of glad that we get approached to it, because we know how we're gonna use energy and a strength and skills. Mindfulness, meditation, prayer is usually what we do. Dance is another one to combat the overindulgence. And then, of course, jealousy and envy. That is something that corrupts the soul from within and out. And we would turn into our shaman or our seeress, to do some offerings and prayers and pray with us and give us some homework. That's what we would call it. Homework, to help do our own offerings to remove the evilness that jealousy brings and corruption that envy does. So then we would do an offering, and go into prayer. And then, of course, power and greed. That's another one we would have to really seriously. I mean, power and greed, that is something that we do like to. We like our own country. We like our own land. We like our own place. But we're more communal, to help each other. And that would be something where corruption has taken over, and we would actually go in with somebody that's exhibiting this and do our offerings and prayer to help. And our prayer is offerings and sacrifices, and not all the time. In the back days, we used to sacrifice animals and stuff, and there's not so much like that, but that would be in Bible. In your Bible, it says the same thing. There's some your sacrificial lamb, and now it's symbolic. Then you had 6, which is air, and that is your procrastination, and that is literally sloth deviating from us, and we would send you into, well, actually, we would send you back to your family, because your foundation's created through your community and your faith. And if a wedge is able to go through that, then we would need to work together and use sacrifices and offerings, to reconnect. How did this get through? And we need to re-solidify your house, your foundation, to keep your morality within and your ethics grounded. And then, of course, we have the 7th sister. And this one I have not, and I've saved it for the last. And there's a reason why. So her name is Knop Paston. I know. Knop Paston. And she is what Solomon would say, the worst of them all. And she is unnamed. He wouldn't name her. He wouldn't name her. He just identified her as Knop Paston. And that is the one that will be not named. He had to gain a lot of God's wrath. He asked and he prayed for God to lock her up, because she was the evilest of all. She had every attribute of all others, because they were needed for her to have all of hers. So she had every little piece of deceit, strife, battle, jealousy, power, and air. And she is associated to the 7 deadly sins, the last one, which last time I identified as the last. This time it's actually the first, which is lust. She is closely identified for lust, because you have to have all the others to create this lust, this passion, this drive, this domination and control over everyone. So ego, when it's attributed to her, it is I am all knowing, and it is probably one of the closest thing to what Christians would call blasphemy. And blasphemy is all about you thinking you're better and attributing yourself as higher than the creator, God. And she is that, and hers is most attributed to lust because that is the overall control, obsessive domination, and passion to be obsessively controlling over everything. And so she is the one that Solomon feared the most and needed God's wrath to lock her up, because she is all six, including hers and the blasphemy over him, over all of it. And so those are the seven sisters of the underworld, or the seven dead demon sisters. And if you follow on into going further into more of the Greek mythologies, you will see that they often get mixed with Pleiades' seven sisters, which were up in the stars. There is the doctrines later, actually, it took a little bit more research. They attribute the Pleiades sisters as being gifted being and going up to the stars because of the Greek mythology of Orion chasing them and Zeus asking for them to be in a safe space. But also biblically, they are the sisters to counterbalance the demon sisters. They are the sisters of light. And so I will talk about the sisters in light when we go into the light section, except that we're just talking about the dark sections right now. And we're talking about how the energy can create this and how ego. So ego is all about whatever storyline you tell yourself, and the negative, it's actually bringing the dark with it. And so that is the energy. And like I said, in biblical, if you wanted to find specific identifying testimonies, it is written within all of them. They just don't separate them out in the sisters, except that the book, chapter 8, chapter on Solomon's stories, he really identifies the 36 spirits, but he also does a big section on the seven sisters of the underworld, and Book of Enoch as well. The Apocrypha is another one, and that has a whole bunch of books mixed in with one, and it is the Watcher's book. So till next time, and then the next video, I'm going to do the seven fallen princes, and they are also attributed to the seven deadly sins, the seven sisters of the underworld, and now how our ego feeds into that. And then in the light section, we'll talk about the super ego. All right, until then, have a blessed afternoon, blessed week, and I'll see you next week.